RRR, an Indian-made Tollywood film that released in 2022 that can currently be seen on Netflix. For the sake of this video, I'll simply refer to it as R3. That's a little bit easier to say. It's an epic action drama about two Indian revolutionaries fighting against English colonialists in the 1920s. R3 is 3 hours long, has some questionable CGI, acting that can get a little hokey, over-the-top action sequences, and it's one of my top films of the year. R3 and MCU's Phase 4 are both guilty of the things I just mentioned, yet R3 made a stronger impression and left me full of awe and emotion once the credits rolled. So, what sets this movie apart? What does R3 have that many of the recent MCU films don't? I'll be excluding No Way Home from my criticisms of Phase 4 because, honestly, that movie brought a level of quality that makes it an anomaly in this phase. So without further ado, I've got 5 simple reasons why I think R3 works more effectively than the MCU's Phase 4. Reason number 1. R3 respects its main characters. From the very first act, it's made incredibly clear that Raju and Beam are front and center. Each of them get epic and memorable introductions, with Raju fighting his way through thousands of people in an angry mob, and Beam capturing a friggin' tiger in the woods. These two are physically imposing, intelligent, and charming. They make the major decisions that drive the plot forward. They go through the biggest character arcs. They have the big hero moments. There's no being sidelined by secondary characters, no being made into a big joke, and no ensemble cast where you wonder who the main character is. In R3, the two main characters take charge of the story, as they should. The lead actors are both charismatic and giving their all with these performances. It seems like they're having the time of their life. Raju is the fire, Beam is the water, and they make for two truly unforgettable protagonists. Reason number 2. R3 takes the ordinary world and makes it extraordinary. The problem with the MCU lately is that they've managed to take fantastical worlds and monsters and make them boring, while R3 takes ordinary events, animals, and settings and makes them feel larger than life. I remember a time when the MCU was relatively grounded. Iron Man was the introduction to the cinematic universe, and it was before any kind of supernatural powers, aliens, or alternate dimensions were introduced. Seeing Tony Stark fight aliens for the first time was surreal and exciting, simply because it was so far removed from the reality he knew at that time. Guardians of the Galaxy made the MCU even weirder, but in a good way. The worlds that we see in that movie are creative and visually appealing. But lately, the CGI and green screen backgrounds of many MCU films are getting less and less appealing. There's a meme going around comparing MCU green screens to the Spy Kids movies, which is meant for laughs, but there is a hint of truth there. Whether we're in another dimension, Omnipotent City, or Valhalla, these settings all seem to bleed together and start to become boring. Same goes for the creatures that our heroes battle. Giant monster attacking the city? Seen it. Nameless army of creatures for our heroes to fight? Seen it. Beam's race across the forest, however, and his battle against the tiger was more thrilling to me than most of the recent MCU monster battles. And to be fair, the effects on the animals in R3 aren't perfect either, but the budget for R3 was around the equivalent of $72 million US. The average MCU film's budget typically has at least twice that amount, so there isn't as much of an excuse there. And I don't even think the artists themselves are to blame. Reportedly, Marvel has a tendency to give demanding and unrealistic deadlines and workloads for their visual effects. What R3 does so well is it makes the real world feel almost like a fantasy world. Every setting, from the forest to the governor's mansion, is grand and extraordinary. The scene where Raju fights through the mob is a visual marvel. It's truly amazing how many extras the filmmakers got for the scene. While I've become somewhat desensitized to the MCU's worlds and creatures, I was thrilled by the exaggerated version of our world created by R3. Reason number 3. The stakes. Let's look at the MCU first. How many times does the world, the universe, or the multiverse have to be at stake? Lately, pretty much every movie introduces a massive, world-destroying threat. Shang-Chi, Eternals, Multiverse of Madness, and Wakanda Forever were all guilty of this. But here's the thing. We know that the MCU is going to be around for a while, so do we really believe that the world is going to end in any of these movies? Going bigger with the stakes doesn't always make them more compelling. Sometimes the most engaging stories have stakes that are more personal. R3, for example, focuses on one character trying to save a little girl, and another tries to give his village the means to defend themselves. These stakes are relatively small when compared to the MCU's, but they feel more important because R3 does such a thorough job at showing us why these goals are so important to our main characters. The little girl who gets kidnapped, Molly, is shown to be like a little sister to Beam. And in Raju's case, we get an emotional flashback where he fights British colonialists alongside his father, whose dying wish is for him to provide protection for every single member of the village. We see the backstory of Raju's village and instantly want him to get justice, just like we want to see Beam rescue Molly. There's also the personal stakes between Raju and Beam. We spend a lot of time watching their brotherhood blossom, and it's heartbreaking when we realize that their separate goals eventually cause them to clash and test their friendship. The friendship between these men means more to me than the universe possibly getting destroyed, showing that having stakes that are well written and compelling means a lot more than stakes that simply try to go big. Reason number 4. R3 has more poignant and personal drama. It starts off with a pretty intense scene where the governor and his wife trick an Indian family into taking their daughter, Molly. The movie doesn't shy away from the horrors of human trafficking, colonization, and oppression. Young Raju's backstory is also heart-wrenching as we see why he needs to infiltrate the English army to honor his dying father's wishes. The best drama in this movie, however, comes from Raju and Beam's friendship. Throughout the entire first half of the movie, we know that each of their goals will eventually clash with one another. There's no forced and contrived misunderstanding between them, but genuinely well-written conflict that leads to an epic battle between them halfway through. It definitely reminds me of Civil War, where Steve and Tony want to fight for the greater good, but have different ways of going about it. To me, Civil War provided some of the most intense and emotional drama in the MCU, and I think that R3 was able to bring that same level of emotion and intensity. The scene of Raju flogging Beam is the emotional peak of the film, where Beam absolutely refuses to kneel. He rallies his people with a song, which is what changes Raju's perception on just how to accomplish his goal. There was a lot of potential for this level of drama in the MCU lately that I don't think was taken full advantage of. Shang-Chi, for example, had some really great and heavy drama set up between him and his father. This should have been leaned into more and made into the final conflict, but instead, it fell into the same MCU formula of having to end with a giant CGI monster battle. Black Widow also had potential with the family dynamic, but instead of using this for personal drama and conflict, it was turned into a quip fest with sarcastic comments from Yelena and roasting David Harbour about his weight. Eternals did try to establish a more serious tone than the other MCU films, but with so many other characters introduced at once, there wasn't enough time to get fully invested in any of them. I do have to credit Wakanda Forever, though. Even though I don't think it was a great movie overall, the way that they handled the tragic real-life death of Chadwick Boseman was respectful, emotional, and well done. No Way Home is a great example of a movie with drama that was intense and well-written. The killing of Aunt May and Peter's thirst for vengeance against the Green Goblin provided some of the best drama in the MCU. It's just too bad that some of the other Phase 4 films and shows didn't follow suit with this. All that being said, I think R3's balance of lightheartedness and intensity was done perfectly. Reason number 5. R3 has a unique and energetic nature. As someone living in the US, I think a lot of the appeal of R3 comes from getting to experience another culture. Everything from the settings, dancing, and music gave me a movie experience that I've never had before. As someone who had never seen a Bollywood or Tollywood movie, it was cool to see how another culture tells their stories. The song and dance number at the party may seem unnecessary and drawn out to some American audiences, but scenes like this are a staple of Indian filmmaking. Personally, I thought the scene was a lot of fun. The sheer amount of energy packed into the sequence was infectious, and I think the song has a good shot to win Best Original Song at the Oscars. This level of energy is present throughout the entire runtime of the film, and it makes the 3 hours really fly by. Another staple of Indian filmmaking is having the main protagonist defy physics and be obscenely strong. R3 is full of that, and while it may be too over the top for some people, it definitely suits my taste. If the US can turn their founding fathers into rappers, then India can turn their revolutionaries into superheroes. The MCU used to give us so much original and exciting content, but I think their formula is starting to wear thin for some American audiences.